Let's get started with this panel on Drupal distributions. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming. I'll just start by introducing all of you, and then we can hopefully have an interesting discussion about the current state and future of Drupal distribution. So I guess we'll go from right to left. We have Miro Dietika, founder of MD Systems and CampaWeb. He is representing the NP8 distribution that they've developed. Huh? Oh, you want to say something? Okay. Next up is Daniel Bosen, the Thunder lead developer for Burda, representing the Thunder distribution. Then we have Bojan Jivanovic, the lead developer at Commerce Guys, representing Drupal Commerce. Then we have Taco Potze, the co-founder of Golgorilla, representing the Open Social distribution. Then we have Glenn Hilton, the president and CEO of ImageX, representing the Open EDU distribution. Then Dr. Christoph Breidert, the managing director of 1X Internet, representing the DEGov distribution. Then we have Ted Bowman, senior software engineer, at Acquia, representing the Lightning distribution. And on the far left, we have Christina Chumillas, designer and Drupal front-end developer at Imbra, representing the Umami core profile, or demonstration profile. All right, that was a lot of words already. So yeah, the idea kind of for this panel is that we'll have kind of an interesting discussion on what the state of the Drupal distributions are, also in relation to Drupal core development, future core development. So the idea, or basically at least my idea pretty much, is that I get to talk at as little as possible, and we just have an interesting discussion amongst you. So maybe you can help me with that. Actually, Christina helped me coming up with sort of the topic and the questions for this panel, and so she had a really interesting question that I think we should kind of use as a starting point. I guess we all heard or saw the Dries note yesterday, and Dries mentioned that one of the big things that we are all sort of working on and striving towards in Drupal right now is the Promote Drupal initiative, so that we are looking for new ways to engage more people in Drupal and to get new markets and new clients in Drupal. And so I basically want to start off by asking each of you what new markets or what new people is your distribution or your product bringing into Drupal. So maybe we can start with you, Bojan. I think that's sort of. Can you give him your microphone?
Thanks. Well, commerce is interesting in that regard because the people who need an e-commerce solution often evaluate us before they reach Drupal, usually because their existing solution does not handle their content needs right. And what we've seen in the Tudotek cycle is that people often enter the D8 ecosystem through us because they were looking for an e-commerce system. They found commerce which was symphony-ish enough, and then they started using the whole thing. And I think there's plenty of room to grow with the current states of the competition in the e-commerce space that can bring more people, since our competition is generally still terrible at handling content, and they're not doing much to improve there, and they've mostly given up. At least the open source competition, right? And Drupal is becoming a better and better content management system. So when I give them a really nice demo with media handling, with workflows, with layout builder, that's going to be something really interesting, not to mention competitive.
Yeah, that's interesting. So are you finding that in comparison, Are you finding that Drupal Commerce is sort of a solution for a particular group of clients or a particular group of people, as opposed to, for example, using a different commerce solution and integrating that with Drupal? Or is that, can't you specify that easily?
Well, it's the same story as with Drupal itself. The bottom level of the market has disappeared because SaaS solutions have eaten that. People who can pay $50 to Shopify will never be happy with any hosted solution simply because everything is done for them there. But if they have complex needs, if they have business logic, if they have very custom evolving requirements, then they will appreciate the flexibility that we give them, especially now that we offer more pre-built functionality than ever, then they can still build on top of or swap when the time comes.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what about you, Glenn? Maybe you can say something towards that same topic, as I guess OpenEDU is also, yeah.
Yeah, so just to give you a little background on OpenEDU, we've been working on it for about 5 years. There's 4 different versions that are out and about 8,000 downloads. We ourselves have implemented it onto 10 universities, and there's the latest version of it. The folks here at 1X Internet helped us develop that jointly together. It's on Drupal 8 and also based off of Lightning. And so our primary target audience has been mid-sized universities. Most of the large-scale enterprise-level universities want to come and kick our tires, but they usually just want pieces of OpenEDU. They would prefer to use their own internal distribution or build something completely custom. And most of the small-scale universities typically are building off of like WordPress has been what we're seeing mostly happening in that realm.
Interesting.
Most of our clients are within North America, but the folks here at 1X have been working with doing pitches here in Germany, and also are working with the National Language Institute in Iceland, doing an implementation of OpenEDU over here in Europe.
Interesting. Now, basically, I would kind of pass the question to you, Christina, because, or basically as a similar question. I don't know, maybe all of you have noticed this as well in the last couple of days, but at least I've noticed it, that the new Umami theme is being used basically in every second session as sort of an example or as a demo for showing off Drupal. So can you say like how you have experienced Umami being used to bring new people into Drupal as well?
So that's a good question, because at the beginning we weren't sure that everybody got the thing that Umami is not, or it wasn't thought as a distribution. It's more like a quick install to test Drupal, not to use as a basic or as a starting point for your website. It's more to test and evaluate Drupal. And I think that's great, because a lot of people is getting that, because I've known several people already that they are using Umami to showcase stuff to their clients. That's great, because it's a super quick way to showcase Drupal, and actually you already have a website that has a meaning and has some content on it, and it's already themed, and it's working, and you can actually showcase what Drupal is doing and several stuff. So I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, so in that sense, I guess Umami is more sort of enabling agencies to sort of, in their process of promoting Drupal, and not necessarily sort of opening new markets in that sense. Would that be accurate?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So one thing I found interesting, what you just said, Glenn, is that you are. So I didn't know this. OpenEDU is based on Lightning, you said. Okay, so that's something interesting. So that's sort of a topic I think we can. Sorry, did you want to say something to that? Go ahead. Just interrupt me anytime. So. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I mean that's sort of another topic I think that we can maybe sort of move to, that may be interesting and maybe foster a little bit more discussion, in the sense that so we have a couple distributions that are sort of targeted toward, or at least some of them are targeted towards fairly specific use cases and are enabling, like we just heard, new markets. So the question would be, and maybe you can say something towards that, Ted, if you have the feeling that Core is missing something or Drupal core is sort of hindering that in some way that sort of requires us to have these specialized distributions, or is it rather that core is actually a very useful framework to build upon to create these distributions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess core is, core is lacking in the sense that nobody makes a set website with core. So if it wasn't lacking, people would. But I think Lightning in some sense just serves like if core development didn't have any speed restrictions, then there'd be no need for Lightning, right? Okay. So if we could just get any features we wanted into core at any pace we wanted, right, then you wouldn't need, I don't think you would need Lightning, something like Lightning.
So from your perspective, Lightning is like your ideal version of core?
Yeah, I think Lightning is a lot of times it's like what we would like to see in core, but is like, so for like layout example, we're trying to get the layout builder in Lightning, I guess 3 will have stuff, maybe some UX improvements that is not in the not in 8.6, but that's partly because of just not there yet, but also partly because it's Acquia's distribution. We can just make decisions just like we think the UX for Lightning would be better this way or whatever. So we'll do that for Acquia for Lightning layouts, I guess it's called now. So yeah, it's more of like, I guess, looking where Drupal might be at some point and putting those features in. So yeah, I guess, I don't know, because I guess Acquia, I think Lightning we go for like what we think 80% use case would be, but I don't think we want to necessarily pigeonhole Drupal into that like 80%, like it's only for that 80%, because then it becomes harder to do that 20% where Drupal really shines and is super flexible. Yeah. So in some sense it may always, some of those features might not really ever make sense in core.
Interesting. Yeah, so I still find that use case of sort of the, distributions extending each other very interesting. So Taco, maybe you can, or maybe I can ask you, you're representing Open Social, and obviously it's not like a publishing workflow is maybe not the first use case of a social media website, but I guess it's part of every website in a sense. So was there some consideration when you started with Open Social to for example, build on something like on a more general distribution, like Thunder, for example, or maybe Lightning, or was that not?
Yeah, we did consider to build on Lightning, but actually we started so early that I think Lightning was just out and we didn't really saw the full potential yet. So maybe like 3 years ago we would have made a different decision if we knew the project was going to go in this way, but it was quite early, so yeah, we were one of the first Drupal 8 distributions out there, so together with Lightning, I think. So for us that wasn't really a decision, but obviously what we see in the distributions now that has changed in Drupal 8 is that the new versioning system is out. And in that sense, it's very interesting for us to see what happens when Drupal 8.6 comes out and what new additional features are there, and how we can incorporate those into Open Social. Yeah, that's for us. On one hand, it's nice because the continuously flow of new features, but on the other hand, it's also tricky, and it also makes the application more heavy and sometimes give features to the users that they don't want. And that's actually one of our biggest challenges, is how to make Open Social flexible enough so that people can turn all their features and modules on and off, because that's what we want in the end, 100% flexibility, while at the same time being able to update your site without breaking stuff. So that's our biggest challenge, to make everything as flexible as possible, lean heavily on automated testing. I think we have some huge steps to make there still, but that's definitely the future that we see for our distribution, indeed, to make it very flexible and to work with any module to be able to turn on and off at least.
Yeah, I think that fits well with the 80-20 thing that you mentioned, Ted. Maybe Daniel, you can speak to that topic, because on the one hand, I know that your team is very, very active in the process of actually getting things into core. So maybe you can talk about that, and also on the topic of like general. I mean, it's kind of the same topic, I guess, but things that core is lacking and things that you find that sort of all distributions need.
I don't think that everything should get into core that we do, but you have to differentiate. We have configuration and we have code, and code I like to get rid of. So if we have something that just works around stuff in core, I'd rather have it fixed in core. But the configuration of us might be too opinionated to be in core or something. So I wouldn't want that in core. It would be too opinionated. It's always for us always a big part of it to decide what should we actually configure and what would we leave unconfigured. So that I wouldn't change. But if we think something is wrong in core and we have to work around it, then we try to actually fix it in core or in one of the concept modules.
Yeah.
So I don't want much code in my distribution.
Right, and I mean, I know that you're investigating the layout builder now that it is in core, but are there like any, and I mean, like I said, you were a major part of pushing the media module in core, but are there any other sort of major building blocks that you find that would be sort of like next on the bucket list of moving into core, or?
Well, we are invested in the CMI2 initiative.
Okay.
We have one developer that is helping there, and we have one developer that is helping the UX and JavaScript initiatives. So those are the big core features that we try to push.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
And on the topic of the being a potential parent distribution, some do it. I've seen people using Thunder as a parent distribution, but I imagine it's hard to do. You have another layer of updates and updating between you and the original stuff, and I don't know how you do. People depend on any other distribution? Yes.
Well, yeah.
Maybe
you can
yes.
talk about that,
So,
Christoph, as
so
well.
I can imagine it's hard to see how to update, who is responsible for updates, and if they clash and stuff like that. I'm
maybe
skeptical.
Christoph, you can talk about that.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah, so we depend on Lightning, which is good because it brings us lots of great functionality, but at the same time it has a flip side to it that also comes with a lot of functionality that we don't necessarily want. And that is actually something that you have to consider when building distributions in general, not only for your distribution, but also for all the projects that you roll out and all the features that you add, that you actually have to maintain the dependencies between those. And that is actually a pretty big challenge. And as projects get larger and more complex, that actually this can be pretty painful.
And were there specific reasons in terms of this update process that made your decision easier to choose Lightning as a base, or?
So we used Lightning because we knew it was there and we knew it was great, and then we just took it, and now we're living with the consequences. And I mean, has been serving us well, So there's always discussion: should we just take it out and replace this functionality that we want with our own? That might also happen, and but it's just about like the maintainability of the project. That is actually the thing that's the thing you have to take into account.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to add to that, Ted, in the terms of like what Lightning is doing for?
Yeah, so Lightning 3 is going to be built on like the sort of components like Lightning panels, Lightning workflow, Lightning, I forget what the other ones are, but you could potentially turn those on in any site. We're trying to make it so you could do that. So potentially, like if your distribution is like, okay, strictly building on top of Lightning is just too much now, you could potentially still include Lightning workflow or something like that without strictly building on top of the distribution. So.
Interesting. Yeah. That's an interesting concept. So one sort of other, or sort of leading into the next topic, I think that's also very interesting, apart from sort of the sharing technical resources and sharing code and modules that eventually move into core is sort of the community aspect of distributions, because distributions are sort of like we said at the beginning, are a way of bringing new people into Drupal core, new clients, new markets, but maybe potentially also new contributors, and that's also obviously something that's very relevant for Drupal core. I know that MD Systems is very actively bringing on-ramping new developers. So yeah, maybe you can talk a little bit about that, how you see that in relationship with distributions.
Yes, our distribution, it was one of the predecessors of possibly all of the distributions here. Maybe it's now really more in the maintenance mode, but that's perfect for our customers. They invested such a lot with such a long-term perspective, way long before Drupal 8 was stable and provided security. And that was the most important aspect for them. Through this movement, we ported all these modules with 25 students over 1.5 years, that all the other 13 modules Thunder is depending on. And those students did an absolutely great job, and they left our company, or now meanwhile sometimes the next job they got was senior developer or team lead at some of the agencies worldwide. So I'm very happy about that base work that we could do with it.
And did you find that having this distribution that you were able to bring to clients sort of also had this effect of bringing on new contributors, maybe from those clients, or from, or was it?
It's the whole, it was a role model in all these agencies, or in Switzerland for everyone who was seeing how Drupal 8 evolved.
Yeah.
We're definitely living this culture and trying to onboard everyone to this contribution every day as part of your regular work life, to be more efficient, to be better connected, to not solve problems and burn too much time on your own. And that's actually, we are definitely saying don't do it as an investment, do it to be better and to be to have solutions more efficient, and basically the cost will be lower if you're good at collaborating.
Yeah. Maybe you can say something about that, Bojan, because your company is somewhat in a somewhat special position in that you actually have a paid developer that gets to work on your product, on your distribution. But do you also find that Drupal Commerce sort of enables further contributors into the Drupal community, or maybe just talk about how you've experienced that?
Yeah, well, the one interesting question that we keep coming back to is whether a distribution is a product of its own, or whether it's just a starting point for Drupal and a set of additional technologies. And in the Drupal 7 times we built Kickstart, we thought it was a product of its own. Then in the Drupal 8 times we rebooted Commerce, and then we built our own new Composer templates to allow people to get started with Commerce easily, with the idea being that you're not installing Kickstart as a product or some other thing. Instead, you're installing Drupal and you're installing Commerce, and you're still a part of the main community. And for us, generally, Commerce has always brought us to the forefront of core development simply because of our needs. Commerce is this large business application, which means that we have always had an interest in making sure that the entity API is as good as possible, as powerful as possible, and then we've been expanding it. In the Drupal 7 days, that meant writing views bulk operations, entity reference. In the Drupal 8 times, it meant working on the contrib entity API module with you. We are now working on adding entity query access to core and to the module because we need it in Commerce, and the list goes on from there. So we try to make sure that we do not just work around core, but instead that we make it better. And the entity API module has mostly disappeared because we've landed easily 6,000 lines of code and helpers in core itself since 8.0. And it's the same with us working on Composer integration, or on the address module, which is a very popular general solution, or the state machine module, and the list goes on from there, of course.
Yeah, but and when you say we, like, do you find that it's like literally commerce guys, or is there sort of, do you find that you are drawing in sort of more people that maybe otherwise would not find their way to Drupal development?
No, when I say we, I mean the Drupal Commerce community. So Commerce 2.0 has easily had over 300 contributors outside of Commerce Guys in the past 2 years. If you restrict that to the last year, we've had over 150 people who sent at least one patch. That means that we have contributors who know that when they encounter an issue, they can get help from us and then they can go and fix it. So people end up working on views bugs in core, on whatever needs to happen. A good example of that was actually Joachim, who has recently worked on views in core, who doesn't work for Commerce Guys. And I mean, there are many agencies who are in the ecosystem, like 1x Internet, like 9Media, like Wunder, and others who then, as a part of working on their large commerce sites, end up working on the larger Contrib and core ecosystem.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting that you mentioned sort of the Drupal commerce community as a distinct, or well, not necessarily distinct, but sort of as a separate concept. Maybe Daniel, you can say something about that, because that's, I find that interesting, because at least in terms of marketing, you know, Thunder is doing basically the exact opposite. You know, with Drupal Commerce, it's explicitly Drupal Commerce because it's in the name. And at least in the outward-facing marketing, Thunder is just Thunder. Like, you don't know that it's Drupal unless you look under the hood. Well, I mean...
Well, I think we very openly communicate that we are a Drupal distribution and not something different.
Right, but I mean, like, would you say that there's like a Thunder community that is sort of a downstream of the Drupal community, or is that not necessarily the case?
Maybe there is something like this, but it's a different kind of community. Because the people we aim at are not developers. We try to get a community of non-developers to understand what it means to do open source and what it means to your company to participate in open source. That's the way we approach that. So we try. So we say we are a publishing company. And there we know other publishers, and we tell them, so why don't you join? But we tell it not the developers, we tell it the CEOs, CTOs.
Yeah.
And this is a kind of different community in a way. And but this is maybe something that Boda tries to achieve, at least in Germany, anyway, not just on the Thunder part, but on other parts as well. So.
Yeah, does anyone else want to say? Maybe Glenn, you can say something about that as well. Do you find that, especially in the like higher education context, I guess there are a lot of, you know, people that are developing and maybe working on the, I don't know, university website or something like that. Do you also find that you're sort of being a downstream of Drupal, or more like a separate thing, or does that not happen? Or
I think, like, you know, it's been a up and down journey over the last 5 years or so of working with distributions, and just kind of seeing that not everybody wants to jump on board with a distribution to support it like they would with, say, a Drupal module. With a distribution, it's often tied to an individual specific company, and so there's a fear about potentially getting involved with that company. So if you go to Drupal.org and you look at a lot of the distributions that were existing and you look at how many contributors there are, you can see there's not very many contributors. You look, I think that the most I've seen, apart from Commerce Guys, and the last time I looked was, I think, for the intranet that the guys at Phase 2 did, Open Atrium. They had like 29 contributors, and I think Open Public had about 25, and Open Publish had about a similar number of contributors, and most of those contributors actually worked for that company. So talking to the CEOs, the individuals that run, you know, Open Enterprise and a number of the other distributions, they were finding it very hard to get people to come on board to work with them to help contribute. So we found a similar challenge, but then along came 1x. And so it's been fantastic to have a partner starting to work with us, contribute their code, the projects that they're working on. We now have a full-time developer that's looking at the code as it comes back, and we can begin to implement it into the project, and we want to continue that forward. And to be honest, the thing that really spurred me on was Drupal Business Days last year. Seeing the guys from OpenSocial and seeing what they were doing was a resurgence for distributions, and then secondly, seeing what Thunder was doing. Both of those distributions were kind of a shot for me, because in North America we were seeing a lot of distributions discontinued. Big challenge for the distributions in North America was, first of all, the cost upgrade to Drupal 8 was huge. And secondly, that they weren't getting adoption from other agencies or even institutions that had internal IT departments that could contribute back to these distributions. So I think that's still a challenge, but I do see some hope.
Interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to add to this. I think distribution, they're tailored at a certain market. And that's why people that have a stake in that market would contribute. So if you take something like the eGov that is for governments, if you're not there, why would you contribute? Plus, what distributions, in my opinion, mostly are, they are sets of configurations that are useful for that use case, right? And yeah. But having said that, distribution is a very powerful tool for actually pre-configuring configurations for a specific use case. That's why they're so popular. And that's also why we are involved in other projects, not only DGOF, because we just think it's a powerful approach of just reusing what other ones have built and sharing what you're building yourself and enabling others to do so. And so we're actually doing a lot of projects with different distributions and also selling that to clients that we have that have more demand than one website or something like this, because actually you always have to rebuild the same stuff again, and that's what distributions are so perfect for, and that's why it's popular.
Cool.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I think OpenSocial is the only one that has a fully versioning working SaaS function or SaaS version. And that's interesting because, we're talking about the low end of the market, and we're still in that low end of the market. We do also a lot of customized enterprise projects, but actually on getopensocial.com you can get a complete installation. So it takes about 10 minutes. You fill in your email address, where you want the server location in Europe or US, and 10 minutes later you get an email and says, okay, your website is ready to use, and we guide the user through the process of setting up their entire installation. And these users have no idea what Drupal is, they have no idea what a CMS is or open source, and they don't care. I mean, they just want to pay a monthly fee, and it should be working well and flexible, and indeed ready for the use case. So from that experience, we're learning a lot. I mean, Drupal is very good in this customization. It's also very hard to maintain that. Our SaaS product can be updated without a zero downtime. We can update all the sites blindly, but it also means we need to completely lock them down and don't give as much flexibility to the user as they would like in some cases. But I still think it's an interesting use case for distributions, because actually that's a business model, and we can just sell as many sites as we want. We work together with Platform SH on this, and we don't. It's like a zero-touch interaction with the client. They can go completely through the process, and it's still a business model that we're exploring. And I think it's also quite interesting for the future of distributions. If we can, run our distributions in the cloud and make them as flexible as possible and also still maintainable, in order to fund the projects, because that's also obviously a big issue. We all have a big wish list, a big backlog, I think, and if any project would have 10 more developers, I think we would all have some job for them. So that's also very interesting to see how are the business models and how are the companies doing. And for MP8 it's closed, for example, it's not publicly available. So also keeping an eye on that, and of course Commerce guys, how they're doing, and I think there's still a lot to explore there and to discuss about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had some more questions written down, especially now sort of the topic of financing kind of came up, especially, and I also always find it interesting how that relates to financial support of core development. But seeing that we have about 10 more minutes, I'd maybe sort of open the floor and see if someone has some questions for our panelists. Now you have the unique opportunity to an AMA basically of these 8 wonderful distribution maintainers. Okay. If there are no questions, we can just
we all have great support, right? Slack and IssueQ, and so.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can actually get into that. Like you said, so you have I didn't know that. That's very interesting. You have a SaaS option basically for your platform. And well, I guess all of the other Drupal distributions and products here have sort of a company backing them. But maybe Christina, you can talk a little bit about what your ideas are in terms of like financing this, because I found it very interesting that you mentioned that people are actually using Umami already in their agencies. So is there some sort of like, I mean, was there some idea of getting some kickback for that, for all the work that you did?
Well, yeah, that's a big point because, for example, at the beginning there wasn't the same people that there's actually super involved right now. That's because probably, so Keith is the person that it's still there, being really involved and actually placing a lot of hours on that. So the main thing that it's on Drupal contributions is that not most of the time you have a company backing you and paying you for your time helping on an initiative. So that's what's happening right now with Umami, that there's Ellie and Mark, Roy and Keith as the main core people moving on. At the beginning there was me, Keith and Laurie, so that's the main thing that happens with contributions, that if you don't have someone backing your work, you have to rely on people free time, and that's not something that can stay on time with something commercial.
But do you think, or maybe there were already discussions towards that, I don't know, but I mean, I guess the idea of Umami is basically to show off the features of Drupal core. In the same way, there could be something maybe not called Umami, but something different that shows off the features of Drupal Commerce. I mean, which gets into like maybe what was Commerce Kickstart. I mean, the concept would be possible for other distributions as well.
So far, exactly that. So last week I was talking with a friend that they were using actually Umami for their company to showcase their projects. Well, to showcase Drupal to customers, and they were saying, okay, we're going to need the translation feature on Umami, so we are probably going to find someone to work on that on Drupal core and actually try to help out with that. So that's the good thing on Umami, for example, so people can use whatever you do on later on.
I mean, Ted, if you said basically Lightning is like your better version of Drupal core, is there like plans for a better version of Umami that you want for Lightning as well?
I mean, I would like to be able to put time into, say, like the layout builder in Umami to try to, I don't know, it would be, I mean, maybe in Drupal core it would be nice if, I guess Umami is so new, relatively speaking, but maybe if we could build up a culture of when we're adding something new to core, try to make sure Umami, if it makes sense, to integrate it in there. I don't know if we could do that, like say when JSON API hopefully gets into core, we could potentially have like a front-end app that uses the Umami data that it's pulling in, but then to display it outwards. Yeah, I've meant to put time to try to get settings tray turned on in Umami, but I haven't been able to do that yet. But yeah, I would like to be able to put more time. I think it would be really useful because we don't want like Umami to be static at what it entered at 8.6, right? And we want to make sure it keeps featuring the stuff that is added to Drupal core.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to say that's why it can be a distribution, because if we want to keep on track with new features in Drupal core, we can give backwards compatibility, and that's the main reason it's not a distribution at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you can, like, Thunder allows creating default content as part of the installation routine. Yeah, are there what are your thoughts on that? Are there plans to sort of expand that into a sort of more fully functional or more sort of demo situation, or?
It's actually a thing that we get asked very often, especially from Drupal agencies who would like to easily show off Thunder with a good nice theme.
Yeah.
I can see us doing this in the near future, just by resource restrictions. But we think about maybe giving the possibility to kind of clone projects that are based on Thunder, and then give you the option to install that clone instead of Thunder itself. So then you have a full-featured project, but we would not maintain that, and it would be you clone that, and then it's actually a clone, not an updatable thing.
Yeah.
And that will be maybe happening, but otherwise we are not doing it so much, because for us, as we are our own customer, so basically border sites are built with this, and we wouldn't be able to have a theme just for the border sites. So
Sure.
So I should mention that we do have our own Umami. So we have developed a commerce demo project, which is a Perl Composer template. So when you're starting a new commerce project, you can choose between two templates, the base one, which just gives you a blank slate, or one that includes our own Bootstrap-based theme and our demo content, which has royalty-free images and about 50 products and facets and categories, so that there is a complete site that can be deconstructed and it can serve as a learning tool. And you can actually start a website on it, because there is no problem with simply deleting the content, deleting the product types, and then doing something else entirely. So it's been working out great for us, and we have actually seen agencies start to develop sites based on it, simply because the Bootstrap theme is a great thing to have, as well as the content to serve as a starting point.
Wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah.
We also have that with OpenSocial, and actually we created demo content teaching the people about how to use the product and how to use the community tool. So the demo content is there for actual purpose as well. It's like a group that only site administrators have access to, so they don't install an empty platform, they install a site that's actually teaching them about the project itself. So it can be very helpful, the demo content as well. Maybe for Thunder, some articles, how to use Thunder will be cool, right? I always want to have like a bot that will start typing like, hey, welcome to your new community, this is where you can find things, and take it even an higher level, but still in the backlog.
Thanks, Van. So can I ask a question?
Sure. I mean, I think we have like maybe 1 minute left.
Okay, just out of interest, how many of you are contemplating to use a distribution? A few hands up. Cool. How many of you are already using a distribution?
Oh, sorry.
How many of you are thinking about building a distribution?
Oh, that's surprisingly many.
I guess I had a question is how many people, oh, sorry, did you have more questions?
One more.
Okay.
How many of you are contributing to a distribution? Nice, great, thank you.
How many people are using a distribution but think in hindsight it wasn't a good idea and should have started on something like, yeah, okay.
All right, thanks very much. So thanks for this enlightening discussion, and thanks for being here, everyone.